All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to ISE main stage this morning. My name is Jeff Day, and I am the founder of North of 10 Advisors. I'm a strategic advisory firm for technology companies. I'm also the chair of the AVIXA Board of Directors, which, along with CEDIA, is one of the owners of the ISE show. So it's a really great opportunity to be with you today and talk about something that I'm extremely passionate in, which is what I call the brand experience revolution. And if you think about it, over the last 10 years, brands have demanded a higher level of interaction and experience to convey their messages effectively. And what we've found, certainly with brand experience, is that not only has it required a higher level of experience, but the technology and the different medias that are used to convey those messages have really lent nicely to the capabilities of digital artistry, along with the technology that we see here at an event like ISE. So I've assembled an expert panel today that I'm thrilled to be joined on the stage with, and I'm going to take a moment to introduce each one of them because the work that they and their firms do represent this intersection, this crossroads of experience and technology. And what we're going to be talking about today is really that brand experience revolution. So first, you've already met some of you that were here previously, Andy Hood with AKQA. Andy is the Global Head of Emerging Technologies at AKQA. He founded and leads the creative research and development team, which specializes in rapid design and development of new digital products and services for clients and demonstrating how new technologies and change behavior can be applied to solve business and consumer problems. Andy was a key figure in the development of pioneering AKQA projects using artificial intelligence for Niio, virtual reality for Nissan at the Tokyo Motor Show, connected car companies in Fiat EcoDrive, and broadcast sync dual screen gaming for Heineken Star Player. Andy was featured in Adweek in their list of top creative minds in digital and was the president of mobile juries at Cannes in 2017.
I'd have written a lot less if I'd realized you were going to read that out.
Welcome, Andy, to the stage. Andy Hood.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, I'm going to jump down the line a little bit here. Nasim Qouta from DreamHack AB. Activating brands in the world of esports and gaming at DreamHack is the world's largest digital festival. With more than 15 years of experience in creative sales and brand partnership in media and entertainment industry, he has for the last 3 years dedicated his profession to esports and gaming. He's had the pleasure to work with brands like Stimorol, AKQA, Pringles, and Samsung with different objectives in activating brand experiences. We have a real esport expert on the stage with us, so welcome, Nasim.
Thank you.
Nick Winterton was named by Adweek in 2011 as one of the top 10 creative minds in digital. Nick Bailey, sorry.
Hey.
Irene Winterton, I'm sorry. So Nick Bailey, he's like going, wait a second, what just happened? Right. Nick, he's held leadership positions at ECD for AKQA Amsterdam. He's the CEO and CCO of ISO, has been the CCO and CEO of Isobar London and creative director of Digitas LBI. Along the way, he's picked up 100 international awards, sat on juries for the Cannes Lions inaugural Glass Lion, D and A&D, Eurobest as one show, and as futurefactor CEO and creative partner, he brings a creative and commercial leadership experience to the table. Give it up for Nick Bailey. Tamás Vaspori from Max Intensity started his career in the AV industry. He became the Eastern European Business Development Sales Manager for professional projection manufacturer, and he was responsible for 16 different countries where he learned the international business. About 5 years ago, he started, he met Andras and Laszlo, and together they established Max Intensity, which is a global leader in brand experience for projection mapping. Tamás is the managing director there now. He does not only focus on projection mapping with Max Intensity and the team, he's also the organizing team of IMAP Bucharest. He's a co-producer and founded Borealis in Seattle, Washington, which is a pretty off-the-hook experience. Tamás Vaspori. Welcome, Tamás. And last but not least, Rob Anders is the CEO and co-founder of Niio Art. He's a tech entrepreneur, communicator. He's an experienced international executive with a track record of inspiring people and driving business success. He spent over 15 years working in different commercial leadership roles at the forefront of a very new and emerging digital technologies including what we refer to as digital art. You'll hear more about that today. As the CEO and co-founder of Niio Art, it is the enabling platform for the finest digital art experiences across residential, consumer, and public access spaces. So Rob, welcome to our panel today.
Thank you.
So we have a couple of videos that I'd like to highlight when we go through it, just to get a little bit better sense of who exactly we have on our panel today. So I'd like to start with the folks at Max Intensity and Tamás. We're going to watch this video and we'll sort of kick off the conversation today about brand experience. So if we could go to the Max Intensity sizzle reel. Pretty spectacular. So I'm going to start us off today, and Tamás, I'm going to go to you on this question. One of the reels that we saw there was Audi's experience, and brands like Audi and others demand these very high-profile and high-quality experiences. What are you sort of hearing as you're out there working with brands day in and day out in terms of why they demand these kinds of experiences?
I think they wanna show something which is different. I mean, which gives the people something cool, something wow, because then the people will talk about the brand that, ooh, I remember that brand. Oh, they are wow. They can show something really cool, which belongs to our brand. I mean, for example, at the Audi, they give us really kind of a free hand to do what we want. They just give us some keywords like Vorsprung in Technik. This is German, like power and speed, and we had to just work around that. So, but they give us really free hand to do art.
As an artist, you have to be very fluid. So, Nick, I know this is kind of your world as well in terms of a brand communicates maybe what they intend, but then you have to really dig in deep to understand where they want to go.
Well, I suppose what's happened over the last kind of however long I've been in this business, which is way too long and makes me feel very old, is the evolution of a situation where brands told kind of abstract stories about themselves to a situation where brands express themselves through multiple touch points, and there's a creative aspect to all of those expressions. And I think we went through a period where there was sort of mixed success in the way that brands have done that. But I think today, more and more, as we interface with brands, we come to take for granted a sort of seamless, connected brand storytelling experience that is expressed really effectively across a range of touch points. But that's really hard to do.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think, Andy? What's your experience there?
My experience there is that obviously, as we've said, brands need to differentiate. If you look at a set of cars and you don't know anything more about them, then there's a whole story part of it. People love stories behind products, basically, to buy into. All these brands have values, basically, and really credible values, and they need to communicate those and get those across. If we look at, say, for example, a big client that we work for is Nike. If you have a high street and you have Nike stores and you have a lot of other stores that sell Nike products, what is it about the Nike store that gets you to the Nike store? There has to be a different experience of the brand, basically, that means that you want to go there. So there's actually understanding the brand's ethos and the brand's values, basically, and what you want people to experience from that, and getting that across. And some of the new mediums that we have, because they reach people in completely different ways, very much more tangible, tactile ways. They can be amazing conduits for giving those experiences and getting those emotional things across.
Yeah, yeah. So there might be a lot of people here today that come from the more technical side. Rob, I'm going to come to you on this question. They would be thinking, how do I get into that brand conversation? What don't I know about what has been described as this journey? You know, is it relevant for me to step forward in the conversation a little bit further?
I think it's important first and foremost for people to see tech as an enabler as opposed to your differentiator. We work specifically, actually, when it comes to brands, with the premium brands, with the luxury brands, and therefore, yes, of course, they have a clear story that they want to tell. But in our case, they're really looking at association. If you are a brand associated to Richemont or LVMH, the association with art has been something which traditionally they've looked to try and do in order to position themselves highbrow. The aura of art, there's no limit, there's no ceiling on price or anything. And then comes digital, which is a reflection of today's medium, and it brings the story together for them because they can actually reach their audiences and engage in a digital way, online, offline, interactive, measure it, and this type of thing, but still associating that with art, with the top kind of video and new media artists. So we're seeing a trend there where companies like Hublot or kind of the fashion brands, Louis Vuitton do a lot of this now. They're looking at VR, they're looking at video, but from the top artists in the world to give the experience, but to also associate it with a premium brand, and that means a lot more dollars as well.
Yeah. Who are they asking the question to? So when you're in the room with Louis Vuitton or another brand, and they say, we want to create a great experience, where does that question start? Like, to whom are they asking, how do I do this?
I think there's different entrance points, and it depends who's asking the question. You know, is it coming from marketing? Is it coming from brand? Is it coming from retail? You know, what is the retail experience we want to be bringing in? How do we kind of overlap the online and the offline, you know, along the journey? We're working very often actually with the kind of often with the C-level team that are looking to try and totally transform their brand and differentiate, not just by a new activation, but to kind of position their brand in a totally new way. So usually with the brand people, with their external branding agencies, and when it comes to things like retail, we're doing a lot of stuff with the designs and the architects. Yeah. Like that for us is important.
A lot of the time, the brands come to us, or probably come to these guys as well, with a we want to use this. What can we do in VR? What could we do here? And actually, the first thing you have to do is come right back from that, because you don't want to be technology first. You need to be like problem first or solution first. So you come back from that and go, well, let's look at what it is we're trying to do here. Right. Basically, yes, we want to create this amazing whatever it is, but what is its purpose? Where does it get to? And then you can start looking at how you're going to achieve it. And I think that's always the first step in a conversation, is to get to the source of the actual problem you're trying to solve and move away from shiny thing.
And it's many times happens that the brands are coming and they are asking something, but it's impossible. So and it's hard to, then we have to find a solution, as you say. So how to solve it? Sometimes it costs more money and they're saying that over the budget. But sometimes we can solve it.
The word I've heard before has never been done before. We actually shortened it to NBDB. So it's like when an NBDB is being requested, you know, it really puts some pressure. Nasim, there are kind of no rules in the esports arena, right? Because the brands you're working with demand that you're already here. Talk a little bit about how you see this.
No, I would say that the initial demand is coming from target group, the consumers. Because they're already integrated in the technology and that development. So there's a big demand to be spoken to with this kind of activations. And Louis Vuitton is a good example. What's the reason they went in to become a head sponsor to Riot and League of Legends with one of the best opening ceremonies in the world of esports? This audience, this generation that we have today, they more or less want to be communicated to with this kind of technology. And that puts a pressure, I think, on every brand today that wants to reach the consumers on how to get into not just the world of esports and gaming, but also these technical solutions to do the brand activations.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think what we're going to do is, if we can, let's cut to the video for DreamHack AB so you can get a sense of the scale and size. And a little bit later, we're going to be opening it up for audience questions as well. So if you have some questions that you're thinking, I've got a catch box I think I'll be throwing around. We promise we won't hurt anybody, but seriously, if you have a question, start thinking of them now. Let's go ahead and cut to the DreamHack AB video. Wow. So, Nasim, how long has DreamHack been around now? 25 years?
25 years. We celebrated our 25th anniversary in December last year.
Yeah.
And it started off as a small lawn with 5 friends.
Yeah, 5 friends.
And grew to become the world's largest digital festival. We got 3 Guinness World Records, fastest internet connection, and biggest LAN with more than 13,000 computers connected into the same network.
Wow. If you haven't been to a DreamHack event, check out their website. It is you really need to go see it and experience it to really understand, you know, the scale. One of the things that I want to talk about is 25 years in business. 25 years ago, did you imagine that today it would look like it is? So this is a question for the group. How have your skills changed in the last 5 years, maybe even the last 3 years, to meet the new demands of these uncommon brand partnerships? Yeah. Louis Vuitton wants to put their name on a DreamHack event. That's an uncommon partnership, but it makes perfect sense. So how has it changed? Yeah.
So Louis Vuitton, they want to put their brands on World's League of Legends, which is one esport title that we also work with. But what we see is the demand comes from our audience and the visitors that we have. They want to be approached by brands who actually communicates in a way that gives them the experience, the impression, the impact that they want to be able to bring back home. So what we see today, you know, the brands that has done the journey best, I would say, is what we call endemic brands, like HP, Asus, all the brands that are providing to the gaming and esports community already, because they have done an impressive journey in how to actually communicate with this audience. And also, you showed the Destiny case as well. The game publishers are extremely good, and there's a big need for brands to actually come in a bigger way to create these experiences.
To do it that way, absolutely. Yeah. What are your thoughts on this?
I was just reflecting actually on that question and thinking that from my perspective, I think I'm doing the same job as I was in my first agency job in 1997. Because, you know, if you're a storyteller, and I think we're all storytellers in our own way, your job is to build an emotional connection with either a consumer or another business, to give a brand relevance, and to ideally create a shift in behavior. And that's the same job whether you're telling a story through film or whether you're building an experience that resonates and that stays with somebody and that inspires them. So, you know, I think Andy put it very well when he talked about the importance of ensuring that technology and the platforms kind of, you know, they're critical, but they are the sort of second part of the conversation with a client. The first part of a conversation is what is the impact that you're trying to make? Let's understand your consumer, let's understand your audience, and then let's figure out which of the many tools, and the change, I guess, the intent of your question is to surface those, is that every year there are more tools in the box, but the problem that we're solving, or the challenge or the opportunity, is the same, I think.
Yeah, fascinating. I want to come to you, Tamás. So I think your firm has an ability to actually score music,
Yep.
to create digital art, to put them together, as a production event, an experience. And would you say that your firm began as musicians and artists and became digital production specialists, or would you say that this industry sort of created an opportunity for you to create something that we didn't have before?
When I met my partners, they were, artists, and this art was, they just saw mapping somewhere, and they were really in love in that. None of my partners are on the creative side. They are not educated as an artist. One of them are electrical engineer. The other one is another kind of engineer. I don't know exactly. But they were love into doing animations, and this is how when we met, they already made some really nice stuffs. And then as I had my experience in AV business, I had a lot of connections. So it was kind of obvious that we started to do, but it was from the art part. Everything was coming from the art.
Yeah. And Rob, as far as art is concerned, you're living at the epicenter of even where architecture and art are sort of colliding with some of the projects that you're working on.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing when you were talking about what has changed and what hasn't changed, in terms of who is an artist and the opportunities, artists will always tell their story, and they'll often use whatever tool they have access to tell their story, and there's more accessibility now than ever before to the tools. It used to be thousands of dollars for a 4K film camera, and you can now shoot it on your mobile phone. And what we're seeing is this convergence between, it used to be the fine art world had the top line artists who were the fine artists, only 10,000 represented in the world by galleries, 500,000 students graduating art school every year. But what we're seeing now is this overlap because of what digital presents in terms of exposure, where gamers, animators, this fine overlap between who's an artist and not is changing. The brands are actually tying up with people like Refik Anadol, who a lot of the brands point to, who's very involved with us,
right,
who is not a fine artist represented by galleries. So there's a lot of play in terms of on the supply side, who's an artist, who's not. And what's interesting is that art is going beyond the traditional white walls of the galleries and museums into space, into commercial space, into hospitality space. Brands are using it. Brands are seen as the new patrons of the art. So it's kind of interesting to see that this kind of is all shaking, enabled by digital technology, and the fact that things like the internet are giving greater exposure than ever before. So
yeah, and I think we have a video, like to highlight some of Niio's work. So if we could cue the Niio art video, take a look at what he's referring to here. It's stunning. I think I'm just my background. I have a little art history study in college, and really fascinated in particular with Renaissance art. I think of what we're seeing today as sort of very similar in terms of new technologies and innovations that are happening to facilitate this. I want to broaden the conversation for a moment, and I'm going to give each of you sort of an opportunity to answer a one word to the question I'm going to ask. What's got you the most excited in terms of a new opportunity in creating brand experience? You get one word, and then we're going to pick one of them to maybe dig in a little bit further. So, Andy, I'm going to start with you. You get one. I know there's 50.
Just involvement.
Involvement.
Just being in. Just being able to do it at all is incredible.
Okay, Nick?
Education, kids.
Education.
The opportunity that it represents.
Yeah, great. Rob?
Wow, what question?
Isn't it great making it a little uneasy in the question?
I'm going to say data paintings.
Data paintings.
2 words. Cheat.
Well, unless he makes it one word.
Data paintings.
That counts. That counts. Awesome. Yeah, I love that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say engagement.
Engagement?
Oh. I don't know. Never done before or something?
NBDB. Yeah,
NBDB.
That's
one word.
one
In
word.
this way, it's one word.
Okay, so there's a theme here. There's a theme of engagement, and there's a theme of doing it. So I think, Nasim, you kicked off with this idea that consumers demand it. We are the rabid fans, right? And we want it. We go to museums here in town. There's the Heineken experience, for example. It's an immersive experience. Brands are spending money to create these experiences. Talk a little bit about engagement. Like, how does that play out in the mind of the brands that you're interacting with every day? Where does that fit?
Well, you're looking at me. So
well, I'm looking kind of across Andy. So.
I think, it's interesting when you talk about the role of art and the role of engagement. The job of art is to make you think about the world differently and to challenge your preconceptions around the world, I think. And, but brands are struggling more and more to, break through the sort of resistance that people have to brands and brand storytelling. Everybody's overwhelmed with their own the stories they're telling about themselves as much as anything else. So I think what engagement offers is that same sense of building new connections and creating new connections actually psychologically that simple storytelling can't do. And that's why it's powerful.
And who I'm thinking of Airbnb as I'm thinking about your case study specifically. And if ever there was an engagement brand, it's Airbnb. And an Airbnb is relatively new, right? So they think of engagement probably in the part of the consumers that interact with the service, but then there's the corporate view of Airbnb and its mission.
With Airbnb, what I think is fascinating about that business is the human factor, actually, and its kind of origin story being about human connection, which kind of got lost a little bit down the line when it turned into sort of, one of the lineup of sort of tech bro villains. But at the end of the day, it was all about people meeting each other.
Yeah. I think we just lost your audio. Yeah, you're back.
Boom. And the way that the brand experience, the platform itself, the experience of the brand when you interact with it on any level actually reflects that, I think, very effectively in the way they're now developing into experiences and actually buying hotels and stuff, is a reflection of that human value stitched through the business.
So I want to open it up for questions. If there's a question in the audience, we have one right here. The catch box in the back, Rochelle, if I could get that from you. Are you going to throw it? Okay. All right. Take a couple questions from the audience. So right here. Okay, there you go.
Thank you. Is it on? Yes, it is. Hi, gentlemen. Thank you. Bob Snyder here. Every year, there's more and more tools in the box. What I'd like to hear a little bit about is, where do you find the tools? Take me through the process where you find the tools and the people that use them. So, for example, you get to a brand, you decide the right tool for this is AI or something. How do you decide who you're partnering with or where you get the tech support and the tech information that you need to get the job done?
Well, I think you need... One person can't do that on their own. Like you see, there are job titles out there that have the word innovation in them or whatever, and it looks like one person is this focal point for everything, right? And it's not true, and it can't work. You actually have to have a network of people. I'm head of emerging technologies at AKQA. It's impossible just for one person, just to be on top of absolutely everything. So you need a network of people across our industry now. When I joined it, there were 30 people in one London office for AKQA. There's now 30 offices globally, several thousand people. And the key thing is to find those people who are passionate and interested in these technologies and these tools. The creative technologists, sometimes they're quite strategic, sometimes they're very art focused, sometimes they're geeks, but there's a lot of different types of people across the world and they're fascinated with it. Creating a community out of that so that you're constantly inundated with have you seen this? This is on Kickstarter, this is on Indiegogo, IBM have just said this was said at this conference, this guy's on stage over here. And you can suddenly start to glean as a group of people what's interesting. And you need to understand those things, but you don't need huge, like narrow, massively focused depth of understanding. You need to start to understand what is possible and get to some ideas of how to discern role quite quickly. Because then you could be in, I'm sure the same is true of all of us, you could be in a conversation with an automotive company, with an education establishment, with a retail establishment, talking about widely different problems. You quickly need to start to filter through these things. And then bring the right set of options to the table where you can have a better discussion. But that comes from having a really good network of people who are passionate enough to be constantly throwing around these ideas that you can start to be a filter for.
Other thoughts?
You know, when we are looking for a partner, for me it's quite easy because I'm coming from a projection manufacturer, so I can just call those guys, my old friends, to, you know, I have a job in this country and it can be whatever country in the world, and they just give me a reliable partner. So, and if they say that this guy can do, then I'm sure that they can do.
Nick?
An important point around this and around creative innovation is that it's not just about shopping for technologies and shopping for partners. It's about putting things together in surprising and innovative ways. And it reminds me of a moment that happened actually when we worked together, where, and this is a long time ago, you'll be able to date it by the platform I'm about to mention, where Flickr introduced a search platform that enabled you to search by color, so you could color in a little canvas and it would return images based on those colors. And there was a bunch of people in the room, and someone said, well, if you can do that way around, surely you can do it the other way around, so you can take a picture and create a canvas, so we can create customized Nike shoes that way, so people can take a photo of something and send it in, and that was based on just smart people of different disciplines sitting around a room and looking at one technology and looking at brand and thinking about how we could use things imaginatively together. And that's really critical. So I think you've got to have people who are connected to the world of technology, but you have to put multiple disciplines together, create the conditions where people are thinking openly and thinking creatively about how to put technologies together in innovative ways before. Otherwise, you can't do things that haven't been done before, because you're just shopping off the rack. And
it's a really important point, actually, that we don't invent new technologies. Yeah. Other people invent new technologies. We take those things and apply them in interesting ways. And the invention mindset and the application mindset are completely different. So if you're trying to create something that's never been done before, they tend not to be massive advances in technology. That's incredibly hard to do now. There was a point in science where you pointed a telescope at the sky, discovered something new, and got your name in the history books. Now you need thousands of scientists, access to the world's satellite network system and huge computers. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
So the key is, as Nick was really talking about, is finding technologies that might have been built to do this and using them to do this, which might be quite simple, might be really simple, but it's unexpected and valuable and surprising. And that's really where the art comes in.
How do you set the table? Like, we've talked about setting the table, which is having the right people around the table. You have a technologist, a brand person, an artist, an engineer. Yeah, how do you set that table?
I think in every case it starts with the why. And if it's not the why for your customer, it's the why for yourself. Yeah. You know, be clear on where your focus is. I mean, for anyone that hasn't seen the Simon Sinek films that you've all seen, like The Why, which I think is a must views for any brand, is the differentiator. and then kind of being clear on what your core competencies are. When you're building, in our case, for example, we're not a service company, we are a platform. So we said, listen, we don't deal with the creation of art because that's what the artists do and they have all the tools. But the moment it's created, we will build out the competencies required to enable that art to live forever on a set of infrastructure. And then we needed to build out, then you need to put in place the disciplines and the methodologies, people, systems, processes to build out scalable platforms and knowing which technologies you can use and actually in some cases which technologies to create. In our case, we're building out, we've got data scientists building out AI engines because they didn't exist for what we particularly needed. So it's about having the core competencies, the methodologies, product, UI, UX, front end, back end, putting it together, but all starting with why. What do we, what is our role in this riddle?
Nasim, what do you think? I mean, you have an interesting table that you're navigating.
From gaming and esports, and especially DreamHack's perspective, is that we have such a broad stage where we actually communicate with a very big audience, both physically but also online. So we have a global reach with more than 250 million viewers, unique viewers on an esports tournament. How can we do the best broadcast production?
250 million viewers.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, you just got to take that in for a moment.
So and we stream it on different platforms, and of course we need to integrate not just brand partners but also stats and so on. So for us, of course, our production team, they do the research, but we get approached a lot by different suppliers who more or less, base their business on providing these kind of services to the esports productions.
Do we have another question here? I'm gonna tee one. Yeah, right here in the front. Thanks, Bob.
Toss it too hard. There is hundreds or maybe thousands young people very very creative and talented. How I just need a tip from all of you. How how to manage them to be visible for you, to be a part of your team, to become part of your team.
For us to get an artist, it's quite difficult because one thing is that in our case he has to have a good software knowledge. I mean, to do the animation. Plus, he has to have a good view of the art, and that's always the difficult thing. So, if you want to do really artistically high-level stuff, then you have to be an artist. I mean, the artist who understands what looks good and what doesn't look good. I'm not an artist. I'm managing the company. I'm a business guy. But the guys are always telling when I'm saying, "Oh, how this is? I don't like that." They said, "No, don't worry. This is good." So I mean, good. But it's not I have to say that the client or the audience has to say that what they like and what they don't like, from my perspective.
Yeah. I can speak from a creative technology viewpoint, just from experience. People, the key thing is to kind of get work out there that can be discovered and engage. So I've had a couple of experiences in my life where somebody once, we were, I don't know, elected to something or other, FWA Hall of Fame or something, and somebody wrote a congratulatory message, like, "You're my favourite agency." And we thought, well, who has a favourite agency? You have a favourite football team? What is this? Kind of looked the guy up. He's 14 years old. He had a blog, tech blog. He was doing some interesting, quite art-focused things with technology. Very raw, but so much excitement and potential. He spent, basically, we reached out to him. He came in with his parents. He ended up doing summer holidays, just kind of coming in. We ended up hiring him. He's got an amazing career now. There's no other qualifications, basically. He don't desire to do anything else. Yeah. Flunked everything else, which was a shame. So I told him specifically not to flunk everything else, and he did. But he has an amazing career, and he hasn't come through a classically trained background. And I don't think you need to, if you have the passion and desire, but you also need to be able to understand and reach out so that you can be discovered. Otherwise, it'd be very, very easy just to sit in the mass with everybody else.
Any other thoughts on that?
So I'll answer it in a slightly different way. Starting also, so keep coming back to this thing about the why. You know, from our standpoint, as tech entrepreneurs, we have a responsibility when we bring tech into this world. The internet and everything was meant to bring us together, and often it hasn't. It's alienated people. We're constantly being bombarded with information, advertising. We need to clean the cache. And so I think we actually need art and artists and creatives more than ever. And too often they didn't have an opportunity, so they'd study, their passion was art, and then they had to work in a web design agency because they were unable to earn from their art. And so I think on one level, rather than talking about how we find people to work for us, we have just around 5,000 artists and galleries from 70 countries on our platform. And I think for us, it's about how do we enable and empower them to be able to showcase themselves more, which is all about tech, which enables them to reach, business models, which enables them to find new sustainable streams of income, and you know, and understanding that, again, in this crazy world, we need to just stop for a moment, start a conversation, give people a moment to clean the cache. And so our approach is about providing tech and education to the community so they can actually do more themselves.
Great question. So we're sort of coming to the end. Is there another question? I think we might have time for one more quick question from the audience here. Let me tee one up here for the group. Getting it wrong. Like, if you were to give advice, what do you know now that you wished you'd known that would be great advice to people listening in on getting it wrong? And then maybe go to the other side of it, which is, if you want to get it right, go this way, right? So you know it now, it's taken you some time to learn it, you've navigated a little bit. What advice, and keep in mind that we're talking to people who are supporting the kind of experiences that you're doing, as well as others that are looking in, you know, on what this industry represents. I'd love to hear your thoughts on getting it wrong and getting it right. I'm going to start, Tamás, with you down at that end. And I saw you squirming a little bit, so I thought he'd be perfect to go to. So Tamás, if you'd start.
Oh, I don't know. Of course, you know, during these 6 years, 5.5 years since we do Max Intensity, I learned a lot about art. I was never thinking that I was working with artists. You know, and now what I learned is how to, because also it's part of my job to handle the client, and so I'm always between the client and the artist. So client has sometimes very strange requests, what the artist doesn't really want to do because they think that it's not art, it's something more, I don't know, something which doesn't look so good, that's the thing. And then, you know, I have to make a balance between the artists and the client, and this is what I think I learned in this 5D, how to manage that. It's not easy.
Yeah. Let's come to the other end here, Andy. Yeah.
So I can't honestly say that there's been some massive epic failure that I've learned some profound lesson from and then moved on. But actually, little failures happen all the time. You know, when we're doing these never done before things, you don't have precedence. So you set out to do something. Quite often, you see hurdles and that you thought you could overcome, and then you realize you can't. What you have to become adept at is being somewhat agile in your thinking. I don't mean agile with a capital A in project management circles. I mean learning how to pivot and basically going, okay, I wanted to go here by this route. That route's now kind of closed. How do I still achieve the same end through a different route? Or how do I make people feel the way I want to feel in a different way, but without compromising everything else? And in any project that has complexity behind it, where you are trying to do something new, these little failures happen all the time. And they largely get forgotten about because you have a group of people, or maybe yourself, or people with you, who learn actually how to pivot these conversations and move in different ways. And it's very rare that what you end up with on one of these projects is exactly what you set out with in mind. When you look at the end result and you look at the first sketches, it's quite rare. So it's learning how to deal with little failures, little challenges, basically, and move past them and be agile in that thinking that I think can help people to build a succession of success stories.
Great advice. Let's go to Nasim.
Yeah. Well, for me, something that I've learned my years in brand activations and entertainment is that never rush into things. You can have a great idea. Everything is like, this is perfect. This is what the client wants. This is what the consumer wants, and we can provide it. But the time frame is too short. Yeah. And being able to actually say no to the client.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
so
something that
the discipline of what it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
And of course, doing small failures, as you said, that's something good because that gives you the opportunity to improve. Yeah. And without these small failures, you can never improve and become better.
Right.
But just to dare and you know, pull the brake and say, we don't have all the premises to actually execute this kind of activation or idea.
Right.
100%.
Excellent. Okay, Nick, and then Rob, and then I've got a last question. We're winding down. Yeah.
I'd build on what Andy says. I think, you know, lots of incremental learnings over the years, but the fundamental one, I think, is that when you're trying to innovate, no one knows what they're doing, right? Yeah. So the appearance of confidence in anyone else is extremely dangerous. And especially when it's
wary.
Yeah. But especially when it's yourself. Yeah. So be very wary of overconfidence. You know, and the second thing is when I think back to the work that I'm the most proud of, I don't remember the process or the technology. I remember the people. It's always down to teams of people and individuals, and the energy and the kind of the magic that happens when you get the right individuals together. So it's always the human factor that drives the change.
Human factor. Great. Rob.
If you're not failing, you do something really wrong. Yeah. We actually have in our contracts for work that you need to make mistakes. Yeah. You've got to learn from them, but it's in our contract that, and you have to see the matrix. So, you know, clear focus on your purpose, stick true to your values as a business, and, you know, and fail and learn and fail and learn, reiterate. I mean, you can't build something meaningful without, I don't think.
It's great advice from the experts. All right, here's my last question to you. One brand that you think totally gets it and is executing extremely well in terms of what we're talking about today. One brand. We're going to go popcorn style here, which means whoever's got one, you can go ahead and say, this is a brand I think gets it.
I would always say Nike.
Nike?
We've worked with them for 20 years.
Top of game.
Amazing. Know themselves inside out. Know their audience inside out.
Yeah.
Understand the need to progress. Yeah.
And we got the mix right. Another one.
I think for us, Audi. That's it. Yeah.
Audi's up there. They get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
Lego, if I had to pick one.
Lego.
Brilliant. Yeah. And a great turnaround story.
Great turnaround story and an amazing Lego windmill here in Amsterdam, by the way, if you have not seen it. Incredible. Nasim.
Yeah, for me, Samsung.
Samsung gets it.
Yeah.
Yeah, executing at a high level. Yeah. Oh, awesome. Rob?
Is it cliche to say Apple? I mean,
it's
they're
not.
not what they were, but like.
Yeah. Yeah.
This whole conversation is
executing at the level. Well, I want to thank our panelists today, and I really appreciate their insight. The other thing that I wanted to mention today is AVIXA announced yesterday the Digital Arts Challenge. If you've not heard about this, the Digital Arts Challenge is an opportunity for digital artists to actually create unique pieces of art that can be done as an individual or a team. It's a competition that will be announced a little bit more in more detail. There's a website going live. In the front of the exhibit hall, you'll actually see a giant display that talks about it. It says DAC, Digital Arts Challenge. There's actually some pieces of art from Rijksmuseum that are displayed there, and using a technology called Streamworks that effectively allows you to manipulate and create your own unique piece of digital art. So we encourage you to check it out. More information coming later today, this afternoon. Thank you again to the panelists. Thank you. And thank you again for staying with us. And have a great ISE.